It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment, everyone.
Good moment.
Hey, Spence. Nice wave from the board there. I just like to get in touch with everyone here.
That's good. We're all here.
Yeah. So, Freeman,
yes.
You're looking chipper?
Feeling chipper.
You are? Why?
Oh, goodness.
Never
don't
mind.
know. It's as good as a mood as any.
It is?
Yeah. I try to choose my mood.
It's like you have a palette.
Yeah, you do.
We do have a palette.
I can ride any thought into any mood that I want to.
You can?
Sure.
That's good. I generally pay attention to what I am thinking and feeling, and I have an awareness of whether it is current or whether I'm hearing from a ghost of my past. And I constantly hear from ghosts of my past. I nurture them, and then I am better able
thank them
to
for their
select.
input. Right,
I'm better able to select because I'm not in an automatic mode.
Well, you know, one of the things I've noted as a correlation is my frustration is linked to my desire to control. And so when I find myself really getting frustrated, my job, at least in this moment in my life, and this may change tomorrow, is really to breathe and surrender and go, okay, where is this going? I mean, even if I feel like this is a situation I need to redirect, I still need to be able to acknowledge that my desire for it to go a particular way that I think is the right way is usually not helpful.
So your faculty of desire, one of the prime generative qualities of all reality.
Different.
You're talking about control.
I'm talking about control. I'm talking about agenda.
So this discernment that you're making and that I'm making, your awareness of when an energy is a controlling energy as opposed to a clean desire and expectation. Plus,
outcome driven. So when I am fixated on the way I think it ought to be, and I don't, the difference.
Sure. I get it. No, we get it. We all get it. There's no one listening here. This is no one's first barbecue.
All right.
So the point that I'm making is that this ability, this awareness of self, to be able to discern, is this a controlling thought and feeling, or is this a clean one? Likewise, the ability to be aware of, am I hearing from a current or is this a ghost from the past that I can respond to? These are measures of success.
I agree.
These are are part of a toolkit that are hallmarks and characteristics of what success is, and we talked about earlier before the show, we were talking about whether we wanted to discuss success in light of our guest today.
Oh, it's a good thing.
Who you're all going to really love.
Redefining success.
And yes, we talked
it.
about, so what are the qualities of success? What are success? And certainly we have just ticked off two components. If anyone was going to be, is anyone making a list? If anyone was going to be paying sufficient
Somebody
attention
write this down.
To make a list of what are components of success, as opposed to the way we have held success, which is a really great segue, don't you think, to go to the commercial?
No.
Yeah, let's go sell some cars now.
No, it's a great segue to bring on our next guest, because he had a moment of sort of personal crisis where he had to redefine his success. So tell us who you got.
Wow. I'm glad you gave away the whole show.
I know. So lead with the punchline.
We don't need to have,
tell the joke.
No burying the lead here. So, we have Sam Polk with us, our good friend Sam. Sam is founder and executive director of Grocery Ships, and he's a recovering bond and derivative trader for a very large bank, which we won't get into, and a very large hedge fund, which we probably will get into soon. Sam?
Welcome.
Hey guys.
How are you?
I'm so good and so happy to be here. Thanks.
We're happy to have you. So,
you know one or two things about reframing success.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, believing simply that success was, defined by money and power. And
it's not?
I sort of put my money where my mouth was. So after graduating Columbia, I went to Wall Street and spent 8 years, as furiously focused on accumulating money as anybody you've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
And, ultimately I got to be about 30 years old, and, there was this sort of moment where I was in a meeting with a billionaire boss, and, to me this idea of billionaire has just been a word, like an image or something. And then all of a sudden I was actually in meetings with these guys, and I was in a meeting with one billionaire, and we were talking about hedge fund regulations and whether they were a good idea in the world. And because they constrained our business, everybody in the room, including my boss, thought they were a bad idea. And I had this sort of like, for lack of a word, a spiritual awakening on Wall Street. And I said, sort of, without thinking, but isn't it better for the system as a whole? And the guy said, I can only think about what's good for us in our business. And it wasn't that I judged him. It was that I realized that, there was something sort of wrong with what I was doing with my life, which was focusing completely on accumulating things for myself. And so it gets to this definition of success that you guys were talking about, which is like, it is a really good question. Why are we here? What is our purpose? And, this might be something that you guys learned a long time ago, but it took me a long time to realize that my purpose wasn't, my own self-aggrandizement.
Yeah.
Yes, and yours is such a dramatic case. We've spent some time together, so I can, I'm sure you won't mind if I share with our audience that a number of contributing factors led to you walking away from Wall Street, and there's this kind of spiritual awareness that was growing inside of you, and some very practical things. But one of the more dramatic ones is that you walked away from a $3.5 million bonus because you felt that it wasn't large enough, and the consideration of that was so shocking to you that and to your girlfriend at the time that you got plunged into a crisis of evaluating, well, what kind of person have I become?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The sort of there's a lot of people that have these kind of like instant spiritual awakenings, and for me that just wasn't the case. The real sort of truth about my story was that moment about that $3.5 million bonus was actually the end of this 8-year journey, and I think it's sort of interesting to think about when I look back, because the moment I stepped onto Wall Street, 3 weeks into my first internship, I got dumped by this girl, and I was so sort of devastated that I reached out to a counselor, and I had no idea who she was, but she turned out to be a spiritual teacher that focused on Native American belief systems. And, and if you think about it, like, the way she used to talk, she used to say words like spiritual malady and circle consciousness, and to me, I thought she was pretty much this like new age hippie wacko. But I was so sort of desperate for guidance that I called her. And over the years, she started sort of like presenting to me this idea that the Western world sees the value of a person based on their achievement. And the obvious corollary of that is that some people, like Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan, are more valuable than other people, than the, homeless guy on the street. And for me, the truth was I believed that for a long time. And it was when I got that $3.6 million bonus, and I was pissed that it wasn't big enough. And then I said, hey, wait a second. Here I am making $3.6 million, and it's not enough for me. And the average American family makes $47,000. And it's not that it's like, I'm bad for making that much money. But it is to say, like, well, if everybody is equally valuable, why am I living this life and somebody else is living a different life? And more importantly, isn't there something I can do about that?
And there's a couple different ways to approach that. One is from One is from a ought to mindset, that it ought to be different. But the other is just more generous, that it could be different. Whether it ought to or not is irrelevant. One of the things that your story illustrates really beautifully, because there's another part, I don't know if you want to go into this part, but there's a part of your story that has to do with excesses at every level. This incessant need to win, this unbridled, ambition that is just about getting the prizes. Get the prize is the girl, the money's the prize, all these prizes, which I've personally experienced that as well, where as a male in this culture, there's this huge pressure to win, and the mindset of competing, everything's a competition, creates hierarchy at every level. And invariably, the soul is going to scream out at some point, because chasing success is, when you get hooked into that, it's addictive is what it is. And then it's never enough, right? So there always seems to be some kind of moment where that breaks down, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was like, maybe it's the culture. I even believe it sort of like goes deeper than that. And I think you said something, Freeman, earlier in the show about, how you learn to see sort of the world as a scary place. But like, one of the things I realized was that what was driving that competition for me were these core beliefs that I lived my life based on, but I wasn't even conscious of. And those beliefs were, the world is a dark and scary place, and also that I am not inherently valuable, that I have to prove my success. And so those things are like, it was like once I was able to sort of, and by the way, I say this, like I've finished it, but I haven't finished this process. It's, for me, it's like a daily struggle to remember that I am valuable, and remember that the world is actually a pretty safe place. At least for me, that's how I've come to believe it. And once I sort of get in contact with those two beliefs, then my need to compete and to win against other people is less, vicious, and then I can focus on, sort of what I believe that we're here to do, which is like, to fulfill each of our own potentials as best we can.
So you have redesigned your worldview, and yet I know from our own discussions that these ghosts of the past that I alluded to at the top of the show, they don't just pack up and take the first train out.
No.
They linger, and it takes some discipline and practice. It's a practice to hold them differently, to transmute the energies around them so that they dissipate. And in that way, we are all always in experiencing levels of recovery.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so you are still have a relationship with those ghosts of the past. I know you've confided. I hope it wasn't confidential, because I'm about to share it with everyone from Santa Monica to Santa Maria. But that there are times in the dark hours of the night when you awake in a cold sweat, wondering whether your needs will be met, whether you have enough money to support yourself, to support your vision of the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's both money, but it's also like, even when I'm okay about money, this stuff still comes up. Like, even today, I'm running this nonprofit, and it's this sort of nascent organization that's getting a lot of attention, but it has a long way to go. And, I, at night, lay in bed, panicked about whether it's going to work, whether the articles about us are going to be positive, and whether we're going to be able to raise money, and all these things. And, getting to sort of what you said about this, like, here's the truth of it, is that this is something I believe that impacts a lot of people, but for me specifically, my story is that I had have a dad who was a pretty narcissistic, sometimes violent guy. And so from that, I have this deep wound, and what that wound looks like is growing up, I wanted to be a perfect kid. I wanted to do whatever I could to impress my dad. And now I believe that that part of me that lies awake at night needing grocery ships to be this, the next Charity Water, the biggest, nonprofit you've ever imagined, that part of me.
The charity win of a coefficient of a Wall Street win.
Yeah, it's still that little boy, the ghost of my past, that little boy trying to be perfect for his dad. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it's like this sad realization that I'm, even grappling with today, which is that, for a lot of time during my spiritual work, I thought, I was motivated by this idea that one day I would excavate this stuff so deeply and face my past so forthrightly that I would then be fixed and I would be free of it all. And now, I've been doing this for 12 years, and I'm really coming to terms with the fact that the best I can hope for, I think, at least right now, is for this wound to become a scar and for that to inform who I am, but knowing that there will never be a time that that mark from my dad, from our culture, whatever it is always going to be with me.
I love it. That's beautiful. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk more about this. I have a bit to share myself along the same lines. So we'll do that when we get back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
We're back with Cutting Edge Consciousness and our guest, Sam Polk, who is the CEO and founder of Grocery Ships. Say a little bit about Grocery Ships for our folks.
Yeah, so Grocery Ships is a program for low-income families right now in South Central Los Angeles who are struggling with obesity and diabetes and all the problems that come from our crazy food system. Mm-hmm. And we provide families who apply to our program and are selected a comprehensive program of, the name Grocery Ships means scholarships for groceries. So for 6 months they receive education as far as nutrition and how to shop and healthy cooking skills. But, and I think this is even more importantly, we provide really like a safe support group style environment for people to talk about the challenges they're facing, the struggles they're having with food, with their kids. And so really it's a program about nutrition and health, but it's way bigger than that. It's a program of sort of personal empowerment and personal transformation.
That is awesome. And this is, I want to take that and I want to blend back in where we left off in the previous segment. That is so heartfelt and so clean on one hand. And I have, again, I wanted to share personally, and I have similar things that I do that just, they show up as just like a great thing that I've come up with that I want to do in my life. But what gets in there is what you were sort of talking about where, and I mentioned it too, where it becomes about my proving myself.
Yeah.
It becomes in moments this insidious competitive pattern where I'm always comparing myself, always trying to, outdo, even, and the arrogance that comes with that, this sort of spiritual arrogance, Yeah. And so I want to kind of track all the way back to what Barnett was talking about at the start of the show, that, the ghosts of the past come along too, that we've got, in any given moment, it's like I have to clean up. I have to just do a moment of, let me clean this up. Because I can feel when it's getting polluted, when I can feel when I'm making it about winning, And something we've talked about on this show, which I'll layer in here too, is there's another insidious storyline in our culture. We call it the triumph story, where everything has to be about how I triumphed, how I won over adversity. And so, again, it doesn't just screw up the purity of the intention. It distorts sort of everything. Like, does everything have to fit that small story, or can something really, just be something I did along the path to the next thing, that was cool and that might have been an expression of aspects of me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, in fact, I totally do. I mean, one of the things that makes me think of is Robert Frost's poem, A Road Less Traveled. And if that poem is often interpreted to be about, I was going on this standard road, but then I saw this less beaten track, and so I took that, and everything is better.
Yeah, let's make that the winning story now.
Yeah, but if you really read that poem closely, he actually talks about how both paths are actually pretty much the same. And then he cuts forward to 20 years in the future and says, I'm going to be talking about this ages and ages hence, and I'm going to be saying exactly what you said. I took the road less traveled, and that has been all the difference. And for me, that's the same thing as, like, people really do, make this, leaving Wall Street story to start a nonprofit. People often say finding your calling, and it's all about becoming happier. And there is some truth to that. And at the same time, I'm a guy that struggles every single day with grandiosity, fear, sense of worthlessness. And it's just always going to be there, So I'm pleased that my life is more of an adventure than it was on Wall Street, and I believe I am closer to my purpose. And, it is really amazing what I can sort of not be grateful for at any given time.
That is really powerful.
Good.
That is so
good.
It's
a relief.
Beautifully shared. I like how you frame that, Freeman. You were talking about the triumph story, which is so nobilized in the culture. And then I'm also, it strikes me that, Sam, how you responded to that was by shining a light on another cultural story that is fed a lot of juice by the culture, and that's the nemesis story. The nemesis story, less obvious than the triumph story, is that if I break a certain habituated response to life, I will pay. And that I am haunted not only by the obvious ghosts of my past, but I am haunted by subtler ghosts, nemesis, sense of a nemesis that is always hunting me and pursuing me, because if I break form, I will pay. And when you step out of the road more traveled onto the road less traveled, with an awareness that you are really now walking arm in arm with your nemesis, and that you're constantly doing the do-si-do with all of those energies and all of those relationships of having been damaged, and healing them, and then moving to the next challenge, which reactivates a deeper experience of them. That nemesis is always there.
Thoughts on that, Sam?
No, I was actually curious as listening to this, as I want to ask you, Barnett, is how does that look in your life every day?
Oh my goodness. I could adopt pretty much the same hunting script as yours. I am not good enough.
Big time.
I will fail. I am fundamentally think that when you scratch the root, always proving that I am worthy of love. And I am aware, because I've done so much excavation and so much exploration, I'm aware of where these things are and how they sit. I'm aware of it psychologically. I'm aware of it spiritually. And my life continues to be a growing expression of how I hold that in ever more free ways. And so my life is quite wonderful. And as I keep expanding it, what comes up are deeper expressions of it. Now, will I one day be free of it? Maybe I will, and maybe I won't. But that is I'm now saying exactly what you said in pretty much the same way. You come to the end. You've taken the road less traveled, in which the things invisible to see I'm suddenly in a very intimate relationship with them, and they are. You don't have to have eyes to make something visible, but you can make them visible with the eyes of your heart. And I know who accompanies with me. I am not blind to my darkness. nor am I blind to my light. I want to be expansive enough to hold it all, and that is the road less traveled.
I love that. That's
I love
fantastic.
that too. I mean, you know, it's funny, like, if you look at the train of my life, all the sort of expectations I had for the things that would fix me, you know, like an Ivy League degree and you know, $1 million in the bank and a beautiful wife and now a beautiful child. And as I keep getting each of those things, then, and that darkness still keeps coming up at lower and lower levels, it's like, I do feel like it's getting me closer to sort of like facing that ultimate truth. And I'm not saying there will be a moment I do that, but
well, you will become. I imagine. I don't know. I'm not a sage, but you'll become much closer. Your relationship with it will be, with that darkness as well as the light, will be more seasoned and mature. And I know that we're going to have responses to this because we always do. There are people who call. There are people who call, who write in, and there are people who actually email me personally, who think that who say, I feel so sorry for your darkness.
Yeah.
They rarely write in and say, I feel so thrilled for your light, but and that you own your light. But they do call in and they feel that that there's something morose about it, and don't have an understanding that I'm not talking about it as a complaint. It's not a cross I'm carrying. But I want to become, I want to develop a relationship of all that I am. And there are parts that are swept under the rug. And the awareness of them allows me to become more and to be more compassionate and to and just to have a larger, freer life. So we're not talking, folks, about dark, ugly secrets. These are liberations.
Yeah, and what we're not... So, look, there's another piece about this show that's just very intentional, is that we're not giving anyone 7 steps to success and happiness. Like, that whole game is rigid, and it doesn't really, you know, at the end of the day, I almost use the word work.
Unless you need 7 steps.
Well, look, 7 steps along the way is fine, but we're not doing that. This is open-ended. So these are ideas. These ideas that we think are valuable. And to the degree that they're valuable, play with them. And to the degree they stop being valuable, stop.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that what Barnett was saying makes me think about is, like, you know, that expansiveness of being able to sort of carry sort of the multiple truths of your life inside you is, for me, it's so valuable, even in my work at grocery ships, right? Because I do have this, you know, wounded child story that, you know, oh, my things were so bad, and that is really difficult, and that led to overeating and substance abuse and all these things. And that story is true. There is also a story that I'm a white kid, male, from a middle-class family that went to an Ivy League school and then made a bunch of money on Wall Street, and that is also true. And so the way that helps me in my work is, you know, I can't go down to these families in South Central and say, I'm just like you. You know, I've had also a very difficult upbringing. But I can say there's a part of me that really understands what you're going through, because I had this kind of dad and this kind of belief system growing up. But at the same time, I'm aware that I'm bigger than that, and that looked like this, and this advantages, and those things are real too. And so I'm sort of able to relate with you from a place of truth as opposed to a place of fronting. And
I'd even pluralize the truths. Because what we're really illustrating here is there's all these things that can exist simultaneously. It's, you know, one of the things that I think is problematic is when we crunch it down to one story. You know, that the story is evolving and there's lots of threads of interpretation. And can I, and this is sort of what Barnett was saying, can I expand to where I'm big enough to hold all of it? You know, can I be that complex?
I contain multitudes, as the poet said.
Yeah, yeah. And look, there's a whole way that I can just really simplify this for my own journey. I like my life now more than I ever have before. And I think this is kind of what you were saying, Sam, is you feel on purpose more than you did before, and that's a good indication you're on the right track.
Yeah. I mean, that is, first of all, that is true for me, although, you know, the thing that is also true for me is, like, the word happiness sort of scares me a little bit, because that's one of the questions I'm always asked, especially by journalists. Like, are you happy? Are you happier? And to your point, yes, I am. But actually what's motivating me on all of this stuff isn't just that. Like, it's something, and it goes to what you were saying about the purpose. It's like, at some level, I feel impelled to get to the truth of this, the truth of what it is. And I'm not saying I'm going to get there, but the truth of what it is to be alive and to be a human being. And one thing I've learned unequivocally is that being a human being, the answer for me is not to accumulate money. And so now I'm doing this other thing, and I will no doubt understand at some point that my purpose is not what I think it is right now. And, you know, that may take me on a harder path, a less happier path. But there's something about that, about getting to the core of this experience that, for whatever reason, I feel impelled to move towards.
So beautifully said. I wonder if it becomes a little clearer, if it could become a little clearer to me if I deeply recognize that happiness is not a result, nor is deservability, but an admission. And I can choose happiness at any moment. I constantly see people in the most dire straits and with the most limited means who are happy.
Yeah.
So it is, again, it's part of my own conditioning and self-conditioning. I reinforce it. The if-then consciousness. If I have this, then I will be happy. If then. Happiness is a choice. I discovered that it really began to pay attention to that when somebody who mattered to me a great deal was passing away, and was quite happy. I wasn't thrilled about passing away, but days away, there was a poignancy, a very poignant quality there of choosing happiness. So it just struck me so powerfully.
Hey, I want to throw another thread in here.
Yeah.
One of the things, Sam, that I think is interesting and worth noting. So at one point, the trying to prove yourself served, you know, in this ambitious way and drove you, and that got results, you know, until it kind of topped out and, you know, having your desire, or I could just replace myself, my desire, because I'm just a mirror of that, to finally, you know, get the girl, win, then I'll be happy that this will be it. And all the programming, family of origin pushing me and so forth behind me, at one point it flips and it's almost like a push against that. And then I think it comes back around. This is now just me speaking for myself, where I actually recognize the value in the ambition. I don't want it to totally be driven by my desire to prove myself. But look, that part comes along too, because sometimes that is what I'm doing. But the fact that I get up every morning, got you know, with a bit of ambition, like I want to do something cool in the world.
Is it desire? If it's ambition,
yeah, no, I hear
ambition
you.
is driven
I know
out
where you're
of
going. I know where you're
something
going.
broke.
No, I get it. Yeah, no, because look, it's muddy is what it is, because sometimes it's ambition and sometimes there's a purity in the desire. Because the minute you know, we tell Sam's story, or you tell it, Sam, you know, grocery ship and what you're doing, and I just go, how cool, yeah, I want to get behind that. So, I mean, there's a cleanness in that you could do something that would be that cool and that, you know, service-minded and expansive, and what a cool idea. That doesn't operate from this, I'll finally prove myself. But I don't know, it's murky.
Well, I didn't hear Sam say that. I don't know anyone.
I'm saying it's cool.
Yeah, but I don't think I'm not going to put words into your mouth. It's not sanitary. But we always are trying. No matter what things that we are contributing in the world, however beautiful, we may or may not be aware that there are also the shadow pockets of, and this also vindicates me.
That's right.
And this also
that's right.
allows me to prove myself.
Yeah.
Or it also allows me to justify myself.
Yep.
Or it also makes me more lovable. Or it also there are menus of strategy that go back to a core hurt.
That's it.
And lots of people say, well, I don't have any of that. And, fine. I mean, we actually had somebody write it and say too much transformation is a dangerous thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, like for me, and this idea is sort of muddled in my head, but I'm going to try to express it. Like, I would say my deepest fear right now is sort of, I know that each individual has within them a capability and a capacity more vast than anyone could imagine. And I know that that's true for myself. I know it's true for Barnett. I know it's true for Freeman. But I especially know that's true for myself. And I am sort of constantly concerned that I won't be able to stand into myself as much as I want to during this life.
Yeah,
that's good.
And so the competition is probably not the right word, but every day I am, trying to be the best and biggest me that I can be. And I'll tell you what, like,
we should start a support group, Sam.
Driven to grow.
We should start. Hi, I'm Barnett, and I'm afraid I'm not going to potentiate. Hi, good morning, Barnett. Hi, I'm Sam.
No, totally. I mean, I think it's like,
no, you're right, though. You're absolutely right. I know that one. It's
Absolutely.
I published this, story in the New York Times that got me all this attention, and all of a sudden I was on the Today Show and Morning Joe and Bloomberg and CNN and
Cutting Edge Consciousness.
That was in the place.
Yeah.
And there was this it was exactly what I'd always wanted. And in the midst of that ride, I was terrified and I felt myself shrinking at some point. And so I know, and it's not that I'm upset at myself for doing that, but I know that there is within me something even bigger than has been put out there. And I just hope I get to see sort of a few more iterations of what that might be.
Well, fathering your daughter, that's one that, you don't get like a standing ovation necessarily. You don't get, everyone writing in fans for that. But heck, I know from having children, whoa, this is a really intense vocation.
One of the things that I do is I have no doubt my daughter will have her own path and no doubt her own wounds. My sort of intent right now is to make her wounds slightly different than mine and slightly less deep. And so, every day, I literally wake up with her in the morning and I say, exactly the opposite of what I sort of was told as a child. So I say, have I told you today that you are valuable, that you are safe, and that you are enough?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's such a fine line too. I mean, to love somebody to the fullest capacity that we have discovered in ourselves. And as we love and as we grow, there is more capacity to love cleanly. And then the paradox is, if I could have prevented, I didn't come remotely close, but if I could have prevented some of the wounds that my daughter suffered, would I have? And once upon a time I would have said, yes, I would have, and would have thus robbed her.
That's it.
Of everything that makes us human.
We call this the parenting paradox, that if you get it right, you fail. There's this whole idea that I'm going to get it right. I'm going to get it right this time.
No one will ever get it.
That's my point.
That's
no
one
my
will ever.
point.
You know what? I guess I want to take a little bit of a different perspective on this particular issue, and it reminds me of this story of Jane. I think it's Jane Goodall or Jane Kim, the woman who spent her life going into the jungles and spending time with apes.
Yeah.
Jane Goodall.
So there's this story of her when she's a 4-year-old living on a farm, and she's so fascinated with the hens that she goes into the hen house in the middle of the night because she wants to see them laying eggs, and she knows that she has to be there and make them comfortable before they'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, her parents forget, wake up in the morning and she's not there and they can't find her. And so they look for her for 4 or 5 hours until she finally emerges, and her mom sees her across the farmyard running towards her with full excitement. And the mom is panicked because she hasn't seen her daughter in hours. And so she runs to her daughter. Her daughter is running towards her, and she gets there, and then she sits down and asks her daughter about her experience.
Fabulous.
And there was that moment, like, it was right there, right? That moment was where many of us would have said, "What are you doing? How dare you, blah, blah, blah," and inflicted this wound on her child, and her child would then be dealing with that wound for the rest of her life. But instead, she didn't.
All right, so this is brilliant. This is really brilliant because there are moments. Look, my stepson became my stepson when he was 10, and I knew that I reacted to certain things. And the one thing I felt like I got right was I would apologize. I would take ownership. One of the wounds I have from my own father is he never ever admitted to doing anything wrong. Everything was always projected on me, and he always deflected and defended. And that was a big thing for me growing up, is that I thought I had to be perfect. My dad was always perfect. It was always my fault. That was a huge part of my own wounding, as it were. Joshua, about 17, blew it pretty bad. And I remember him coming in our bedroom, and he said, "I want to talk to you guys, and I just want to tell you what happened, and I'm sorry." And I'm like, he laughed afterwards, and I said, "Jazz, that's it. I did it. That is, you know, I can point to that and go, wow," because I really had very consciously set that intention that I wanted to bring a level of humility into my relationship with my son. I call him my son. I feel that way about him. That allows him more permission. And so, you know, we're kind of saying two things simultaneously, you know, and I think they're both true. Again, we're okay with paradox around here. That, you know, if you try to get it perfect as a parent, you're going to fail, because perfect is actually not going to work out. There's supposed to be bumps along the way. However, I do think there are moments we can point to something and say, yeah, right on. But you don't get to know, right? It gets reflected back in kind of weird. I mean, Barnett, you can talk to this having an adult daughter. And I know we're way past our break. Barnett, I think we just blew through a break. I just think we did it. We're going to get in trouble. We'll just go.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. It's better to apologize.
We're having fun.
Yeah, well, we didn't. Yeah.
But comment on that, because having an adult daughter, how many times do you get to go, that little moment where something gets reflected back, and you did something, you influenced in some way this person's life, and it's reflected back in a beautiful way.
I have it constantly.
Constantly.
I have it constantly.
Yeah.
I also have it frequently. I have remorse. I don't have guilt. I don't have, but I have remorse over some of the ways that I handled certain things.
Absolutely.
And I can see, talking about the Nemesis story, I can see, talking about my own these stories of vindication or feeling unsafe, or you know, this whole menu of things at the bottom of our agendas. I can see that by making choices that were reactive, I have passed them on. So as long as I'm reacting and not responding, and again, those are murky areas, I can see that many of my issues, the sins of the fathers, are past, and I see it, and so I have remorse for that. And on the bright, beautiful side, I am very grateful and honored and I have so much joy to be a witness to who that woman is, and to see who she's becoming, and to know that I had I participated in supporting her with enough love, so that she could bang off the training wheels and ride her own bike. And that's really what it's about. She's right, you know. She's doesn't have training wheels on. She's doing her own life.
I love it.
That was beautiful.
Hey, Sam, we are gonna have to wrap up. So
that went
you
quick.
have to holler like that.
Yeah, it's
Barnett.
it's my.
Some noises on radio don't come out that well.
It didn't work out. Who was it? The
squealing
governor?
is never good.
Who is the
Spence,
chairman?
help us out to a time, because I've completely
Who was
lost
it? The
track.
chairman of the Democrat Party who blew his entire political career.
Oh, Howard somebody?
Howard Dean.
Yeah.
That was my
Howard somebody. Poor guy is like horrified. Listening.
Yeah, it was my Howard Dean yelp.
Yeah, don't yelp on the radio. Okay, so we are gonna say goodbye to you, Sam. Before we do, I want to
Say hi to
let
Kristen.
people. Yeah, please say hi to your wife. Give your baby a hug for us. Before we say goodbye, though, I want to give folks information so they can get involved in what you're doing and find out where you're going to be next and all of those various pieces of the puzzle.
Okay, great. Well, you can check out the website for Grocery Ships, which is groceryships.org. And you can also check out my personal website, which is samuelpolk.com.
You have a book coming out.
I have a book coming out called Gatsby Interrupted to be published by Scribner in 2015, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, we'll have you back when that's out so we can talk about that. For those of you listening, we will be back for a very short, brief wrap-up after this message here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain. Talk quick.
Talk quick. We'll talk really quick. So yes, the components, some assembly required pieces of success. What are they? We get so upside down about looking at the shadow play, the artifacts of the trinkets of success, and not so much attention to all of the other qualities.
Well, we get distracted with the expressions of success as opposed to the qualities.
So what are the qualities?
For me, fun's number one. For me, that there is value and service in what I'm creating. Number three is that it's an expression of my gifts, talents, and abilities. Number four is that it builds community. And number five is I get recognized. That's in there. I want to be recognized for my contribution. I want value for the value I'm putting out. I want a reciprocal world. I don't want to just be a giver. That wouldn't be fun for me. I want to be a giver and a receiver. So I've created 5 criteria for success for me. But notice that, the recognition is in there, but it's 5. Number 1 is fun. I really have to enjoy what I'm doing. Because I know we both have committed to a creative life, and creativity only occurs when I'm playing. There has to be that element of looseness for me. Even if it's intense and heavy, which it can be, there's supposed to be a lightness, some space in there. How about for you? Top 5.
Meaningful relationships and satisfying work are resources that I can turn to along with the resources of my spirituality, my inner work, the resources of my outer world, friends and nature, and it's also intimacy with my skills and with my beliefs, and an awareness of my thoughts and what my feelings are, as well as also a closeness with my desire and my expectation and my imagination. Those are big resources. Vulnerability is a big resource. And then there's whole areas of bounty and prosperity that have to do with my my wonder, sense of wonder at the power of being able to respond to challenges using all of those other tools and gifts, and there's the wonder of fun, which is generative energy, grace, knowing that there are things about being human that come naturally to us.
I love that.
That's a big component of success.
You know what doesn't come natural to us?
What?
Ending the show.
Yeah, it doesn't.
All right, so for those of you listening, you just have to keep coming back.
Pull the plug on this. Just yank it. Just yank the cable out of the wall.
Come back next week.
We'll see you next week. Thank you.